yes, people need to be moderate, but you've got to, as you said, take an iterative approach. You've got to take it day by day.
Hey everybody, welcome to this next episode. And today I want to introduce you guys to another friend of mine. His name is Oliver Woods. He's a digital strategy director for Red Squared. It's an award-winning digital performance agency based in Vietnam. Oliver has been a pioneer in the field of digital in Asia, having worked across a number of agencies from Malaysia, Singapore, New Zealand, Australia. The guy's a commentator, he's a speaker, he's a keynote speaker, he's a judge. I'm not quite sure what else he does, but Oliver, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Andrew, for the wonderful welcome. It's probably a little bit hyped up, but I appreciate the kind words. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. It's, I think, week 2 of lockdown for me, just working in my bedroom at the moment. Noticed the deer that's coming through. But how about you? How's everything going with you?
Good. I mean, look, it's been a very, very strange couple of months. I've been pretty much at home now for nearly 3 weeks. So yeah, it's been working from home. If I'm being honest, I would say like productivity's at like 50% normal. I mean, my productivity is not great normally anyway. So it's for the first few days, it's easy. Then I think you spend more and more time and, the kilos start piling on.
100%.
It's the worst part, right?
100%. There's only so many push-ups and sit-ups I can do.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
I've been actually.
You know what I do, right? Like,
yeah.
I'll go on now.
No. What are you doing?
So, okay, I've the Oliver Woods copyrighted lockdown fitness plan involves me whenever I do conference calls when I'm not on video. What I do is I just pace around the house like a lion in a cage and just pace around my apartment, which is not that massive. It's pretty small actually. But you actually, I had a call yesterday and I paced around for like an hour. I reckon, I'm going to be able to hit my 10,000 steps just by pacing about on teleconferences. So maybe that's the upside of quarantine. Maybe I'm actually doing more walking around than I was previously.
Yeah, definitely. For me, I try to do at least 20 push-ups every hour and
wow.
See how that goes. Yeah. So for every new hour that happens, I just drop and do 20 and then carry on for the day. It's just good for me because I'm always sitting down, just on the computer, tapping away. So it's just kind of good to kind of stand up straight and just drop and
like this,
But hey, look, there's a few things I want to cover, but one of the things I do want to cover was I just wanted to learn a little bit more about Red Squared agency. Cool. Do you want to take it away?
Yeah. So look, Red Square, we are a digital agency, a digital specialist agency. We were founded sort of just over 4 years ago. We're based in Ho Chi Minh City, got about 30 people here, actually more than that now. Look, we're an agency of collection of specialists. So, we were founded on the basis that, each of us has a specialty to bring to the table. My background has always been in digital strategy, social strategy, kind of brand and creative. Our CEO, Luke, his background is in paid. So him and I actually met working together in Singapore more than a decade ago, working at a company called Group M, which is a media agency. And he's like an expert in search as well. So, when we first started, it was like a nice, it's been a nice start from, having that search, paid, creative, social experience all into the mix. We've scaled up. It's been a really exciting, challenging, fun 4 years. We've managed to pull in some awards, win some awards regionally, win some clients. So yeah, even though we're based in Ho Chi Minh City, probably the biggest difference is we work with a lot of clients based out of Singapore, Malaysia, and probably some of the bigger clients that people would know of. We work with is, brands like Reebok. We run all their social media for the region. Look, it's been a really fun ride, and it's been, I came over to Vietnam to join Red Square, so it's been a real baptism of fire. It's been really, really enjoyable, really, really good learning. It's been a fascinating learning experience so far.
Yeah, that's really good to hear. And you also mentioned social media, like having worked both in Asia and in Australasia with New Zealand and Australia. What are some of the differences when it comes to social media play and behaviors?
That's a good question. I would say that Asia is ahead in terms of social media strategy. in terms of social media execution. I think one of the biggest challenges in Australia and New Zealand is that marketing teams seem to be a lot smaller. People have to be Swiss Army knives. They have to do social, search, paid, organic, creative. And I always found that in Asia, social is a bit faster moving. So, I think in Asia, people are a bit more accepting of it being fast moving. You kind of make some mistakes, but you also, you end up winning a little bit more. Whereas I think in Australia and New Zealand, at least I've always found it's a little slower. Things seem to be a bit more set piece. Creative is always polished to the max. Whereas in Asia, it's there's a bit more room to spin around in. I think the other thing is that, just the raw data that shows that people in Asia are much more likely to discover, and as a rule, really, as continent-wise, are much more likely to just discover brands through social and much more likely to engage brands through social. In Australia and New Zealand, it's the data says there's less use of, for instance, Facebook. It's unheard of in Asia not to have a Facebook account. I think it's a lot more common in Australia and New Zealand. People don't have them. So yeah, I would say on those areas as well, maybe people are more open to sharing in certain parts of Asia, taking photos, sharing on Instagram, sharing on Facebook, putting themselves out there. I think Australians and New Zealanders can be a little bit more reserved. I don't know. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I like, to your point, I think with Asia, it does give the ability for a lot of, like, just with the sheer size of Asia itself, especially in Southeast Asia, where you and I are currently living in at the moment, it gives the ability for brands to really look at it from a totality point of view, like how a piece of content can react towards it. But at the same time, because there's so many players in this space, there's so many voices. And therefore the message, like you mentioned before, with regards to the speed of which content is produced, and it may not be as polished as, say, the West, it's produced quickly because the space, the time and window is so short that you need to get your message out there. And so I think you do have the ability to really experiment with regards to the content creation that you have here. And you also got different cultures as well to kind of look at. So you might have one piece of content which is developed for a specific culture, and then you can basically localize it for different parts of the cultures in different regions. And I think that gives it from a brand perspective, like working from both brand and agency side, it gives that variety, which is really good.
Yeah, I think culture in Australia and New Zealand as well is much, as you said, it's much more monolithic. Like it's everyone's kind of, it's not politically correct to say it, but everyone's a lot more similar than they are in Australia and New Zealand. Cultures and communities seem to kind of converge, whereas I think in Asia, a lot of people are really proud of their different identity, even within a country, for instance. Yep. I used to really love, to your point, I loved working in social media in Malaysia, where you've just got, totally diverse communities. You've got to learn, the number of times I stopped international brands like Samsung, and I used to do Samsung social strat for the region. All the guys in Leo Burnett in the US would always tell me, we need to use a dog in this creative. And I'd be like, no. Like, you can't put dogs into creative targeting the Malay Muslim community. And they go, nah, that doesn't matter. I don't really get that. And I think that's the fun of working in Asia, as you said, right? You learn about all these different cultures and different communities, and you don't just talk about it. You actually have to put it into action. If you don't, you won't be successful. If you don't know that, what's appropriate for a Muslim audience, for a Hindu audience, for a Christian audience, for a Vietnamese audience, for a Thai audience, if you don't know this stuff and don't learn it, you won't be able to survive in digital out here, really.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think also, between Asia and the West, you're starting to see like a very segmented, like highly segmented, like piece of social platforms that happen. So you have this, specific social platform for one thing and for another thing and for another thing. And whereas I think with, when you look at Australia and New Zealand, like, yes, the dominant is Facebook and then Instagram, and then everything else is like a distant third, fourth, or fifth. And I think with here, like, we're more closer.
Yeah, no, and like, there's so much national variation, right? I think WhatsApp, for instance, in certain communities in certain countries, for instance, in Singapore and Malaysia, WhatsApp is just where it's at. Whereas you compare, WhatsApp in Vietnam isn't anywhere near as popular. It's only used by a smaller group. Whereas platforms like Viber, here Zalo is huge, right? It's actually such a massively untapped platform in Vietnam. I mean, part of that's Zalo's fault for not being really accessible to brands and advertisers. I think it's been very money and media centric. But I still think Zalo, there's so much opportunity just to engage with customers, right? Having a Zalo channel. I mean, one of the things that surprised me in Vietnam was often you'd be at, walking down the street and there'd actually be a sign outside of a shop saying, here's our Zalo number. I thought that was really, I don't know, I always thought that was kind of cool that you'd have that literally outside of a little like banh mi shop that actually have like a Zalo address, which I just think in New Zealand and Australia, maybe that's starting now, but I think Vietnam and Asia is much more ahead in terms of integrating their social and integrating all those different platforms with even for like small businesses.
Yeah, that mobile communication and mobile commerce is so much more advanced here in Asia than it is over in Australia and New Zealand at the moment.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I think part of it is also there's that singular type of when it comes to the financial payment gateway system. So, for instance, if we talk about China, like everyone uses WeChat, everyone uses WeChat, as a payment tool, for instance. So it's a much more centralized approach. Whereas I think in Australia, because there's so many different parties involved, it makes it a lot hard to integrate at times. Yeah. But there's also freedom in doing that. So, there's pros and cons, I think. But shifting gears for 2 seconds, I know that you recently participated in a webinar a couple of days ago with yourself and Wes and another person as well. Tell us, to those who weren't there, like, what was it about?
So long story short, we did a webinar hosted by The Hive, which is a co-working space around Southeast Asia, on how businesses can react to COVID-19 and build out, tactics, strategies, kind of pivot your creative and your marketing. They kind of went beyond creative and marketing, really. Start pivoting your business, particularly in digital, to survive and thrive during COVID-19. Yeah.
Nice.
And I think it was a good discussion. I mean, I think we discussed all sorts of stuff, right? One of the things that I highlighted, and I think, a takeaway that's really, really important right now for anyone doing business anywhere in the world, is turn off any automated marketing you're doing right now. If you're still sending out automated emails to onboard people, if you're still sending out automated SMSs, automated messages, chatbots, you've got to turn it all off. You've got to take control of the wheel yourself and manually do it right now, because otherwise the risk is you're going to really, really piss people off. You're going to make a mistake. You're going to say something to someone that's, you're going to wish someone happy birthday and they're in hospital, and it'll come across as being incredibly insensitive. So that was probably one of the key takeaways that I shared during that session.
Nice. And for anyone who's listening or watching, I'll put links in the show notes below so that you can watch the full webinar session. I like how you said before, there's that, being really cognizant in terms of the empathy involved in it, and the reason why you want to turn off all those kind of automated messages is because, like, we're in a very unique situation at the moment. I mean, the fact that you and I are talking on a computer, and even though we only live a few kilometers apart, is, it's strange times.
It is, yeah. It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah. So part of the reason why I also wanted to talk to you, not because you and I are mates, but also because of the fact that you posted
Andrew.
It's all good. But you posted something really interesting on your LinkedIn feed a couple of days ago with regards to the New Zealand Parliament, how they're leveraging, I guess they're taking advantage or somewhat forcibly embracing the use of Zoom or those kind of video conferencing to, essentially make sure that the government is still functional at this particular point in time. Did you want to share a little bit about your thoughts around that?
Yeah, look, I mean, I am a New Zealander, so maybe I'm biased, but I've been really impressed with the New Zealand government's response to COVID-19. I mean, at least in the last few weeks when things have gotten much more serious, and it's now spreading throughout New Zealand, and there's a nationwide lockdown. One of the things that I was really impressed about, which I shared on LinkedIn, is that basically the New Zealand Parliament's essentially, in layman's terms, they've condensed it down to this committee, which the government's actually given a majority control of to the opposition, which is quite an interesting move, right? You compare it to some other countries which are talking about running elections, which is just mind-boggling at this point. And this committee is actually completely operating through Zoom. So you can actually live stream it, that you can go onto the New Zealand Parliament website, and I'll get Andrew to add the link in. You can watch the sessions. It's pretty amazing. You can see these kind of politicians kind of scratching their faces, looking bored, you know, the eyes moving out, like all these emotional reactions, which you normally wouldn't get, right? I mean, you can watch Parliament. I mean, most people don't know you can watch live streams of parliaments pretty much in every country in the world, you know, apart from some places. But you know, it's not the same as you said. It's like these people are all kind of, it's like simulated parliament. And what really impressed me as well is I think it's really cool that politicians are modeling the behavior they're telling other people to do, and the fact that they've quickly adapted and pivoted to Zoom without really mucking around. And you know, the fascinating thing is it's also giving New Zealanders actually a chance to watch the democratic process in action digitally. So you know, I think there's a lesson in there, right? You know, I think, for instance, AGMs and board meetings. If you want to be a transparent company right now, how cool would it be if you start putting your AGM on Zoom? Or if you're a, you know, one of the brands that I think is doing a great job in terms of COVID-19 response in Vietnam is Pasteur Street Brewing Company. They're a craft beer company. Obviously, bars are shut down. They've created a virtual tap room, so you can go and have a beer and sit around every day, do your happy hour in the comfort of your bedroom. So, you know, I think these are the kind of responses, whether it's a government, whether it's a business, whether it's an NGO, if you can rapidly digitize yourself and kind of follow what people like if the New Zealand government is able to run Parliament through Zoom, it definitely means your business is able to as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, if an entire nation can do it, hey, you know, anyone can do it. And plus, Zoom is free.
Yeah.
It's, you know, there's a free plan option, and I think it's a good way for businesses to stay in touch and, you know, to provide some sort of normality as I guess, you know, it's not really business as usual. It's business unusual.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I think besides, you know, business and besides politics, I remember we were talking yesterday, you know, you were talking about sport, and you know, I'm no sportsman, so I remember you were saying, was it F1 is doing some really interesting stuff?
Yeah. So what's happened is obviously the first round for the Formula One season for 2020 happened to be in Melbourne, but because of the Corona situation that occurred, the race got called off.
Okay.
And subsequently, the other rounds got called off. Obviously, China, which was, I think, the following rounds, that immediately got postponed to later in the year. Vietnam was supposed to host one, I think, round 3 after Bahrain. That got postponed as well because of the situation that we have. But what's actually come about it is that you have these young drivers who are sitting there not really leveraging their skills somewhat. They can't necessarily work on the cars or anything like that because there's a ban or there's a restriction in terms of how many people you have in a group. And so what they've done is they've started to interact with fans from a digital perspective by going on to esports, right? And racing each other, which is really cool. It's really cool. So F1, you know, Formula One, it's a racing car game. For people who don't know, they've also got a Formula One game itself. That itself has a big cult following. So the fact that you have real race car drivers actually competing in an esport tournament against known esport players, firstly, it's really cool as a casual fan, because then there's that not weird, but it's a really cool, authentic kind of connection being had via digital. Secondly, it allows for cross promotion for a brand in terms of their merchandise. And also it still allows the sport, the drivers, the teams to stay relevant in the midst of the situation that's going on at the moment, especially there's a lot of doom and gloom. Every day you wake up, there's a 20% increase in the amount of people that have been infected or passed away. So, you know, in the midst of all that, you have these little gems of entertainment that's still coming along, and sporting events in itself is such a big thing, but sporting events is the lifeblood of a lot of people that rely on having sporting events to either, you know, take their mind away from their current day-to-day lives. Another one that just got announced recently was the NBA. The NBA, they've got a game called NBA 2K. It's obviously 2K20 now because it's the year 2020. But they've just released like the official NBA just did a press announcement and released and saying, hey, we're doing an NBA 2K 16 player tournament featuring real players. And that's so cool.
Wow,
so
that's
have
genius.
Exactly. It's like the superstars of your sports who probably play those games anyway. They're just going to compete against each other. It's going to be fun. It's going to highlight,
so cool.
Yeah, it's going to highlight like themselves, but also it's going to highlight charity causes as well. So within this tournament, the winner gets, there's a donation of about 100,000 that goes to a particular, charity group as well. So there's a cause, there's an actual cause for it, which is really, really nice. And it's a good PR kind of trip for the sport, the brand itself. I wouldn't be surprised if you're seeing other sports such as like the UFC or even FIFA come into play with that as well. So I think it's you're seeing these different industries try and find ways to connect with their audience through different means, digital means as well. So I think that's really good. So just really quickly, besides New Zealand, I know you mentioned Pasteur Street Brewing Company, and you also mentioned the New Zealand Parliament. Have you seen a couple other kind of brands in different industries that are also kind of doing well in terms of how they're communicating and leveraging digital technology to kind of still stay relevant within the space?
Yeah, that's a great question. Look, one of the smartest moves, which is already a trend that's firmly in play, is all the DJs going onto their live streaming systems and live streaming out mixes. I was watching Paul van Dyk play live from his bedroom the other day. And I mean, I think the cool thing I think as well is you've seen in Berlin, a bunch of the clubs came together and kind of formed this live streaming collective where essentially they're saying, well, we want to keep on spinning and we want to keep on playing to crowds, but you can't come and watch it. So let's translate that experience online. So I would say the music industry, I mean, it must be very, very, it is extremely difficult times for the music and events industry. I've got some friends in it who are very seriously affected. A good friend of mine, Keith Tan in Singapore, has created a kind of like I lost my gig.sg website where he's basically getting all the Singaporean event music organizers together to list how much they've lost to engage the government, which he's actually succeeded in doing. So yeah, I would say those are kind of two examples from the music scene. One is, the live streaming DJs, spinning out of their bedrooms, keeping their fans in the crowd engaged and probably winning new fans in the process. People like Keith who are going out there and lobbying the government and using digital tools and, using digital tools to kind of track how much has been lost in the music scene. So yeah, I think that's really cool in terms of the music and event space. Probably another area that I've been, pretty impressed by generally has been, transport. A lot of parts of the transport industry. I hate to keep going back to New Zealand, and I promise you I'm not super parochial. I just thought this was a really cool example. Auckland Transport released an update to their app that basically includes data on how many people are in the bus or train at a given time. So it essentially it's like inbuilt social distancing features. I think as well, the Singapore government released an app called Trace Together where, you use your phone and let's say you and I meet in a coffee shop and both have Trace Together, this government app installed on our phones. The Bluetooth connection pings each other. It saves our device IDs. If, let's say, God willing, I get sick with COVID-19, the government gets my phone, it traces everyone I've been in close proximity with, and it says, okay, Andrew's been exposed to you. It reduces all that hard work of contact tracing, and it means that the police can go straight to you and say, hey Andrew, so sorry, but Oliver's Share Together app, Trace Together app has connected you, shows he's been exposed to you. So yeah, I think that's the kind of the GovTech angle. I think GovTech is something not enough marketers look at, and some really interesting stuff going on there. So yeah, I would say kind of like music and events and GovTech are kind of two broad areas that I think have been doing some really interesting stuff in the past days and weeks. Nice. And I remembered
when I had my last chat with Wes, he mentioned something along the lines of, and I know you might have a thought upon this as well, which was they've switched their advertising strategy from, from I guess an activity based to location based, in terms of the ad spend, in terms of the ad search. Do you agree with that?
I think one of the macro outcomes of COVID-19 is going to be a focus on smaller communities, right? And the Vietnamese Prime Minister gave a really nice, he said something very nice in English. It's basically like, you should be limiting contact between home to home, between neighborhood to neighborhood, between district to district, between city to city, between province to province. You should be limiting. So I think, if that's happening in Vietnam, and I'm a big fan of the work of the Vietnamese government. I'm a definitely defender of their work generally. I think, Vietnam is actually a world leader in many areas. And I think the work the government's been doing here is spectacular, to keep the epidemic under control. What I would say though, is that as much as, local is important, you've still got to do mass advertising. Yes, local advertising, getting your neighbors involved in your business. Yes, there's going to be this temporary downtime for the next few months, maybe 6 months while COVID gets under control. But my point of view is I think we're about to enter a 2 or 3 year long kind of condensed, crunched Great Depression like recession. It's probably going to be softer than the Great Depression, but already the unemployment numbers coming out of Israel, 23%. Australia is going to be at 15%. New Zealand's Treasury is saying it's around double digits, maybe 10, 12%. I'm sure those numbers are going to come out all around the region, all around the world soon. You've still got to do mass targeting. You can't just plan for the short term. You've got to really think, who are going to be my customers in 1 year time? Are they just going to be people in my neighborhood? Probably not. Once COVID-19 is over, people are still going to want to travel. People are still going to leave their districts, leave their neighborhood. So look, local is a good short-term angle. I think it's not good. It's absolutely necessary to pivot temporarily, but it can't be a long-term solution. You've got to keep up mass reach advertising if you want to be a successor and succeed during COVID.
You made a good point with regards to, you mentioned something about your customers, for instance, and doing mass marketing, because people will still be traveling. People will still be doing those things prior to this particular situation. And you're right. Like, I think it comes back down to also, and I've said this in previous videos, is understanding who your customers are, knowing the fact that things have changed. Yes, it's changed. The customers that you once had in your persona decks have now kind of changed because of the situation.
For sure.
The hierarchy
For sure.
changed. So they just need to be temporarily adjusted. But this is where continual adjustment and iterative approach is so useful. And in the design space, we talk about design thinking and iterative design. And you can really apply that approach across anything that you do, whether or not it's strategy planning, whether or not it's specific tactical advertising to communication as well. So I think you made a really good point about that.
Yeah, and look, I think largely the data is showing that most people are totally accepting that there's going to be advertising continuing, right? And I think, yes, there was some initial conversation saying, oh, you shouldn't advertise, and there's going to be the occasional arsehole out there who causes problems for your brand, saying, oh, you shouldn't be doing anything during the epidemic. And I kind of turned around to those people and say, okay, well, do you want the unemployment situation to be even worse? I mean, do governments, businesses, are you expecting businesses to go through some kind of extended mourning period just because of the epidemic? I mean, yes, businesses shouldn't be taking advantage of the situation. Anyone who does that deserves a jail sentence, right? If you're jacking up prices right now and doing that kind of stuff, I mean, I think you should go to prison, right? I mean, if you're profiteering off an epidemic, right? It's really, that to me is really, it shouldn't be dealt with in normal, we're in wartime. But on the flip side, in wartime, during World War II, businesses still operated as well, right? And I mean, the butcher shops didn't shut down during World War II. Radios didn't shut down during World War II. Cinemas still went on. Yes, people need to be moderate, but you've got to, as you said, take an iterative approach. You've got to take it day by day. The one thing I would say to you, I think you made a really great point. If you do this gradually and you take it day by day, not only will you help your own mental health, because if you think too long term right now, your brain's just going to explode. If you take it day by day, week by week, you kind of, as you said, build out your plans, iterative planning. If something goes wrong, it's not the end of the world. You can start again, right? Don't build 20,000 page PowerPoint presentations. Don't ask your marketing team to do that right now. You should be having daily war rooms. daily brains trust meetings, get all the smart people, all the creative thinkers in your organization together, get a lawyer in there to make sure you're not doing anything illegal. Constantly come up with new ideas. What are you going to put out on Facebook today, YouTube tomorrow? How are you going to update your website? How's your brand going to look in a month's time? How can you do brand actions that are going to be meaningful? I think this is what you should be doing. I completely agree with what you said around making it everything iterative, everything agile, testing and learning. If you make a mistake, just getting back up again, dusting off your shoulders and trying again.
Yeah, definitely. And part of doing that as well is daily stand-ups. I think that's really useful.
Yeah.
And using tools such as Zoom, such as Google Hangouts as a way to do those daily stand-ups to kind of say, hey, this is what I did yesterday. These are 2 things I'm doing today. This is what I'm hoping to achieve. And that way, if you have this cool daily check-in, everyone is able to understand and know what's happening, and we're able then to help each other. So if I know, for instance, that you're working on something around, today we're going to do some quick announcements with regards to the products that we're going to sell today, and let everyone know that, once it's sold, it's done, and we have to close up and blah, blah, blah. So it's small things like that. Cool. Okay. What can I do to help you kind of get those content pieces? Do you need visuals? Do you need any of those elements? Do you need a quote from such and such? So it's getting that really good and really early communication from everyone from a group perspective. And I think having
Definitely
stand-up groups is really, really useful in this particular case. Mate, you said some really great gems with regards to that, and gave some really good examples with New Zealand Parliament and all parts of the government as well. What, because we're kind of finishing up a little bit, but what are kind of some of the things that you've had to tactically adjust with some of your clients, given the situation over the last, say, a few weeks?
I think everyone right now is pressing pause in certain activities. They're cutting budgets, they're delaying activities. We're trying to be proactive right now with our clients. We're trying to be supportive and, seeing how we can add value in a really difficult, challenging time. We're leaning forward in terms of giving new suggestions, new platforms, new channels. We're encouraging, we're really, we're trying to arm our clients with as much data as possible, depending on, their level of interest. Some clients aren't so interested in it. They just want to continue, which is fair enough. They want to just, focus on what they're doing. Some clients are more interested in looking at the macro data. Look, it's been a lot of conversations, a lot of internal conversations on alignment, and a lot of external conversations. There's a lot. I'll tell you, it's been hectic and it's been intense, but I feel like now things are stabilizing a tiny bit. I feel like things now are getting a little bit, people are now starting to say, okay, actually, maybe we shouldn't turn everything off. I'm not claiming credit for that. I think none of us are. But I think now, I think people are accepting this is going to be longer. It's not going to be a short term. Yes, it's going to be a short COVID-19, maybe 6 months. But I think people are accepting that if this is going to be a 2-3 year long recession, the worst thing in the world would be to completely go dark right now. So that's the point of view we're sharing with our clients. I won't lie, it's a really difficult time. I think anyone out there listening, I'm sure everyone's going through really, really similar challenges right now, let alone being productive at home, but more just some of the hard conversations we're having to have. But look, I think we're just trying to soldier on, do what we can, left foot, right foot, trying to stay in touch with our clients as much as possible using digital tools. Look, there isn't really much else you can do really as a creative agency right now. We're just trying to keep our head above water.
Yeah, definitely. And I think to add on to that point, adding in authenticity in terms of restructuring your communication. I think there's so many tools, there's so many digital platforms out there. Some people can definitely be, deer in the headlights in this situation when it comes to all these different digital platforms and tools that you can use. But you said it quite clearly. You said it really nicely before with regards to, hey, we need to have these conversations in terms of how we stand, how we align, where budget's kind of being moved, what type of messages we want to try and push out, how do we want to push it out, how much effort we're trying to push in, how do we allocate different resources, different places. And to me, when you kind of wrap that all up, it comes back down to, as you were talking, a crisis management plan. Essentially is what we're talking about at the end of the day. It's like, how do we, this is a crisis that we're in at the moment as a brand. How do we, firstly, accept it? Secondly, deal with it and move forward.
Yep.
And move forward day by day, and having those, like you said, war room, meetings every day to kind of understand where we are at, where we're trying to move towards, and what we're doing to get to that.
Definitely.
So just to finish up, I want to give the audience, listeners, your contacts, 2 key tactical advice that you would give to anyone in any field right now going through this particular situation. How can they get through with what they know?
Number one, I think make the most of downtime. If your business is going a bit slower, use this time to do surgery on your website, surgery on your social analytics, surgery on your brand. Use this as a chance to audit everything that you've been doing in the last months, years even. Look at what's worked and what hasn't. Keep your team busy on looking at what's worked in the past, and then try and take the learnings from that audit and then see, okay, well, how can we use these based on the current situation, based on what we've learned? What's the gap? What's the proximate gap that you can really fill based on things that have worked in the past? Just because COVID's throwing everything up in the air doesn't mean that old tactics and old creative ideas aren't going to necessarily work. They just need to be tweaked and adapted. So I would say that using that audit and then using that audit to inform action is really one of the most valuable things you can do right now. Yeah, particularly for people whose time is not being maximized, you can direct them to going to your Google Analytics, into your Facebook Insights. They can go into a big creative audit, look at all the ads you've run on print, on TV, on radio, take it all together, audit, see what works, what didn't, and then apply those learnings. I think the second idea and the second thing that's really important right now is don't go dark. I think it's, you can turn off existing campaigns that you're running. Fine. I totally agree with that. And one of the pieces of advice I said before is turn off anything that's automated. Stop doing business as usual activity. Good. Don't turn off 100% of your communications with your customers. They will forget you if you turn them off now. The most successful brands during the Great Depression in the 1920s and 30s, the brands that stayed active, that didn't forget about their customers, they stayed around. Yes, they changed how they communicated. A lot of brands in the 30s transferred from print to radio. Seeing the same thing happening here, right? People are transferring from offline to online, and old online tactics to new online tactics. So just be a candle in the dark for your customers, both past, present, and future. If you turn everything off and by making everything go dark, you're risking being forgotten. And I think the risk of making a mistake and saying something insensitive is actually not as bad as being completely silent and being completely forgotten about in a few months' time. So yeah, really those 2 key takeaways: do surgery on your brand and marketing communications, on your performance, see what's worked in the past, try and adapt this into a plan of action for the next few weeks and months. Have all the things that have worked in the past in the back of your mind. It'll save you time from having to create wholly new stuff. Plus, it'll actually be stuff that's worked before. And really, it's that second thing. Be that candle in the dark. At minimum, you've got to have some light. You've got to let some light shine in. If you don't let some light shine in, you're not only making a strategic mistake from a marketing perspective, you're actually putting your business in jeopardy. You're potentially jeopardizing your employees as well. That's probably the 2 pieces of advice I've been giving, not just here, but to some of the clients and partners that Red Square's been working with in the past few weeks and few months.
That's great. That's really informative, and that's really tactical advice. So thank you so much. For anyone who's looking to reach out to Ollie, where can I find you?
You can find me anywhere, mate. You're welcome to give me a ring. I'm on LinkedIn. You can follow Red Square on. You can find me and the company on LinkedIn. A lot of people spell Red Square as Red 2 Digital. That's how you can find us. Just type in Red Digital, and it will pop up. We're on Facebook as well. But yeah, look, I'm really open to connecting through LinkedIn, and we'd love for our company page to get a few followers. We're going to be doing a bit more activity through it in the next few weeks. So we need to follow the advice we're giving out. To be fair, we've been pretty flawed for a few weeks working on our client stuff, but now we're going to be planning on doing a bit more activity, like webinars like this. So yeah, would welcome any outreach. We'd love to see how we can help you recover and help you deal with the situation. Definitely.
Great, and thank you so much, Ollie. And I'll put all those details in the show notes as well. And for the next episode, stay tuned. But until then, have a good day, and I'll see you soon. Bye.